Have you ever looked at all the gear musicians use and wonder, how does it all work? My name's Dustin, and my family and I are setting out on a quest to inspire both adult and kid musicians to create new sounds together and learn all about what it takes to produce great music. We'd like to invite you along on the journey as we explore the gear professional studios, musicians, and hobbyists use to create their art. We'll take a close-up look at the gear and ask,
what's this button do?
Hello and welcome to this week's first episode of 2025. And this is our special year in review for 2024, looking back at our top 10, actually top 11 things that came out in 2024 that I was most excited about and that I truly think were the best gear of 2024. Now, I know a lot of people put out lists in December, and you've all probably seen a ton of videos talking about people's favorite items. I do not like to do that in the middle of December because I like to wait until the year is completely done to work on my top list, because I find that in this industry, a lot of really cool stuff comes out in December, and I don't like to miss those things when I do my year in review. And I am so glad I did, because this year, 3 of the top 11 things actually came out between Thanksgiving and the end of the year. So I would have missed those completely if I'd have shot these back when I was doing my end of the year videos. So today I thought what we would do is we're going to look at everything. I'm going to be honest with you. I am very, very struggling to actually pick an order to these things, because I honestly love all 11 things that I'm going to show you really close to equally. So what I've decided on is I am going to do 7 or 8 amazing things that came out, and then I'm going to show you my top 3 for the year, because there are 3 things that I think stood out more than anything else as just the gear that will never come off my board going forward. So we're going to save those for the end of the video. Join us now. We're going to take a look at each one, and I'll kind of talk about them and give you a little heads up. So we're going to start off with one of my most fun and favorite gear pieces. You guys saw me do a video on this earlier in the year. I'll show you a little excerpt from that in a second, but a lot of the big lists that came out this year and the top 10 list that came out for last year all mention this pedal, and I am no different here. I think this is truly one of the best pedals, and I'm going to say this because I have not been a huge Keeley pedals fan. I've played them. I love them. There's nothing wrong with them whatsoever, but I've just never really bonded with a lot of different Keeley pedals. This year, toward the middle of the year, I did some demos and fell in love with the Beach Boys series that they did, and thought, okay, this is just absolutely amazing. They really have stepped up their game. And so when they announced the new pedal called the OCta-Psi, I thought, okay, I've never done a Keeley fuzz that I've really loved. Let's try this out and see. And I am so glad that I did, because this is now one of my most used and favorite fuzz pedals, but it is so much more. So many people on the demos have talked about using it as a fuzz and as a whammy pedal, but there is so much more packed into this. I personally think that I believe it's the M2 setting on here is the one I use. Is when you've got it all the way over to the right-hand side. This is genuinely one of the coolest settings. It gives you that kind of Queen-esque sound. And then, of course, you have all of your cool Digitech-y whammy kind of sounds going on in here, too, with your octave ups and your octave downs. And honestly, the chorus mode in here is one of the coolest sounding choruses I've ever played. So to me, for versatility, you get an octavizer, you get a cool fuzz pedal, you get this really, really cool harmonizer kind of unit, and all rolled into one for a really inexpensive amount. I think probably my best value of the year, hands down, is the OCta-Psi, and genuinely one of the best pedals that I've ever played. This is staying on my board permanently. I love, love, love this. Robert and the team nailed this. It is just 100% amazing. Let's take a little quick listen to an excerpt from the video earlier this year. And if I have the blend knob all the way up, you're just going to hear that. The more I bring this back, the more you're going to hear my original. So you'll hear my original string and you'll hear that. Now when you introduce the fuzz into that, very Jack Whitey, like you can. cool that sounds? It is such a wicked lead line, and for creating those Queen-esque tones, I've used like Digitech harmonizers before, and they just don't quite cut the mustard, and trying to do the double tracking like they did back then, it's a little bit of a pain in the rear. I think what Keeley has developed in here is such a cool way to do that, and it sounds amazing, just tweaking those little octaves a little bit. Coming in at number 10, we have another pedal that I demoed on the channel earlier this year, and it is from a really good friend of the show and somebody who I genuinely believe to be the best pedal maker out there right now. Everything that he builds, I order. I think that Thorpy effects are some of the best effects on the marketplace. And the Electric Lightning that he released in the middle of the year this year. And this was a tough one because there was a lot of killer Thorpy releases. The new ER2 Block 2, the V2 version of the Camo Flange, all were absolutely killer. And the collaboration pedal they did with Andertons, oh, amazing. But the Electric Mistress, the Electric Mistress, the Electric Lightning is just insane. The sounds that you can get from here, the different drive tones, just the uniqueness of this, it was so good, and it plays so well with other pedals that I was blown away. I still genuinely believe this to be one of his best pedals, and I love Thorpy for the modulation and the fuzz effects. This is something completely different. I have not been a big drive guy, and I thought this absolutely killed it. So let you hear a little tones here and just see why I love it so much. Versus. A little more drive. And as we bring up the drive here, thick that gets, how driven. That sounds like you're cranking a tube amp up. Just gnarly, natural. And then the second you click it back off, back to a clean. And you can hear those harmonics that the tube gives that you just can't simulate with FETs. And it just, there's that little bit of that ring, that chime as the note fades out. It's just so prevalent in a tube drive. Coming in at number 9, we have one of my other favorite pedal makers who did something that I don't think got enough play this year. Our friends over at Beetronics released the Abuehla Fuzz, and this is seriously, I know it's a big box, I know it's a little different shape than traditionally Beetronics is known for, but this is one of the best fuzz pedals I have ever had the honor of playing. And what I love about it is it has its own unique character. It's got this cool fuzzy sound, and when you play with it the right way, you can even get kind of a Schulman PLL kind of sound. But what I loved about this more than anything was putting other fuzzes and other drives in front of it and seeing how it played with it. Usually fuzzes don't combine very well. Typically a fuzz likes to be at the very beginning and it doesn't like to interact with other fuzzes. This one, when you put another fuzz in front of it and then drive it into it, it could do some of the coolest, wildest sounds where it could thin them out, it could thick them up, it could do all sorts of crazy things, but they just play well with other fuzzes and create some really unique tones. So I've just hands down thought that was one of the coolest fuzzes. Plus, come on, that is one of the coolest looking fuzzes of all time as well. So on the look stage, I think of all the things I'm going to show you, this is the best looking of everything that came out this year. Insanely well done. Just killer job from Beetronics. And if we bring the loudness up a little bit and bring our treble up, watch what happens. And this is where we get into waiting till the end of the year. anybody who follows a channel called That Pedal Show, Dan and Mick do an amazing show. I watch it religiously. They cover a lot of pedals, but they also cover a lot of soundscaping, interviews with artists on how they use their pedals. It's genuinely, I think, one of the best pedals channels out there on YouTube. They collaborated with Hamstead Effects and just announced right toward the end of the year a new pedal called the Redwing Analog Stereo Modulator. And anyone who's been a fan of the show knows that Dan absolutely loves his old electric mistress, and he has always been striving to try and find the right kind of sound to get that flanger sound the right way. And the V2 Camel flange from Thorpy was one of the best substitutes out there. It's one I've been using for years and absolutely fell in love with it. Well, this was designed originally to be something like that and to really give you those cool sounds, but it went way, way above and beyond. The team at Hamstead took this pedal, they added in stereo ins and outs so you can run it in true stereo. They also have a wet dry switch on here so you can actually make one of them come out in dry if you want to. It has phase controls on here, it has expression controls, and it has so much control to this that it is so much more than just a flanger. And in fact, there's lots of demos out there showing you the flanger sounds of this. I'm not going to show you that today. I'm going to plug this in for a second because we haven't really done a full demo of it. But I want to let you hear something on here. Just the thing that wowed me. Right now, what I've done is I've got the control set up where it's not flanging a whole lot. The speed is set to almost nil, and the blend is all the way up. The gain's turned down quite a bit, and the width is kind of toward the middle. But instead of being a flangery sound, what this does is widen your stereo signal. And for those who follow my show, I run most of my stuff in wet, dry, wet. And when you hear what this does to that stereo field when I click it on and off, it is truly going to be one of my on all the time pedals when I'm performing. This makes everything I play through it sound better, and it doesn't sound like a flanger when I don't want it to. I can make it sound like a flanger, but you don't have to make it sound like a flanger to get an amazing sound out of it. So I'll let you hear what that sounds like real quick. Okay, we're going to just show you a little bit of what the Redwing sounds like. I'm going to be using my Collings LC, and just to give you a sound, this is my clean tone. Got a little bit of reverb going on there. Sounds great, right? Now again, I don't have it set up right now in the crazy phaser sounds. What I've got the Redwing set up to do is to just widen the stereo field. Watch this. I'm gonna turn it on now. See how that brightens everything up and widens it out? I'm going to take it back off. Again, back on. And that's what the gain just set at like 8 o'clock on the dial. It's really low, but that speed is all the way down. Now, if I increase the speed, let's take the speed to noon. Now you hear that modulation taking over. See, it's just absolutely crazy how huge that sounds in a wet, dry, wet rig. I'm going to bring the gain up to about noon too, and watch what happens. See how it increases the brightness on that? It's not like a drive. Just gorgeous. And if I take it off again, it feels stale, like you're missing something. Just genuinely, I think that's going to be one of my always on pedals now. It's so, so good. Now we're getting down to the nitty gritty, the stuff that just absolutely blew me away this year. And these started when I went to NAMM this year. I met up with Seuf Fx, and we were talking, and he had a set of pedals that were all inspired by classic vintage pedals. And we were talking about some of the great pedal makers out there that are doing these old vintage units, but charging an arm and a leg. There's all these great reissues that are coming out of fuzz faces and old zonk machines that are $600, $700, $1,200 for new made pieces that they've got vintage transistors and stuff in them, but they're so expensive. Seeker wanted to put out a series that was more of a traditional vibe, but that didn't break the bank. And he put out a whole series. It started off with 5 pedals. Now I think they're up to 7, if I remember right. But we've been demoing these all year on the channel. And this series is actually going to come in at number 7 because I can't pick a single one out of here. The Supa is probably my favorite just because I'm a huge Supa Fuzz fan. And the Zonk I absolutely love. But you can't go wrong with a single pedal from this series. What he did here, every single one of these sounds like an absolutely fantastic vintage fuzz pedal, but without all the drawbacks of massive tone loss and issues if you've got it running as the second pedal in a chain instead of the first pedal in a chain. They've done such a great job of creating a modern version of those classic fuzz pedals without breaking the bank. Most of these are sub, 300 to 250, right in that area. The price points are very realistic for people to be able to afford versus some of these really expensive fuzz pedals out there. So I'm not going to pick a single one. I'm just going to tell you that whole line, if you are into fuzz, buy it. You won't be sorry. There is not a bad one in the bunch. And holy crud, they are truly, if you're looking for vintage fuzz tones, nobody's doing it better out there right now. It's just absolutely insane. Almost like a buzz. And then I'm going to hit it really hard, and then I'm going to hit it really soft with the pick and let you hear the difference to it. So here you go. That was kind of a heart attack. Now watch the same thing if I light pick it. Just love how smooth and creamy that sounds. Seeker freaking nailed this. Okay, we're about halfway through the list, so I think this is the perfect time to break out one of my favorite guitars of 2024. And this one is one that you have not seen on the channel yet, and it is absolutely insane. This is one of the first Bass VI guitars by our friends over at Seuf. This was made for the Fretboard Journal this year. The Fretboard Summit this year. I was hoping to get to sneak out there. I didn't get to go. And I kept seeing my friends showing up, playing in their booth. And this guitar kept coming up. And when the guys got home, I reached out to them and found out that this did not sell at the show, and I was dumbfounded because I kept hearing little snippets of it. So I went up to the shop to play it, and for those who don't know, several years ago, I worked with Seuf to take a Squier Bass VI and redesign it, rebuild it for a contest that 60 Cycle Hum, the podcast, had. And we actually wound up winning the podcast for Coolest Modded Bass 6. We created a really killer Bass 6, and that's what I've been playing for years. So I went up there just to check this out, really not thinking about buying a Bass 6 or anything. And from the moment I plugged it in, I fell in love. What they have done, I've played a bazillion Bass 6. I love the Bass 6, but it has so many limitations and so many problems with Bass 6s, especially for guitar players. For bassists, it's pretty easy. You plug it into a bass amp, you're pretty good to go. But for guitar players, a Bass 6, to get those Cure-esque sounds that are so wide known for the Bass 6, it's tougher, especially when you're running through tube amps. Tube amps are not designed to handle bassier style inputs. When you're playing through 12-inch speakers, they're not really designed to handle the flub of a bassy sound. So for being a guitarist, it is trickier to use. You either have to use a bass amp or you have to use an amp like my Silktone Parallel that has the 15-inch speaker that can handle a little bit heavier, bassier ends. But what Seuf have done are to create their own pickups for the Bass 6, and I am not joking, the sound from these can be played through any device and sound absolutely amazing. Not to mention their typical amazing finish work where they have the killer checking. This plum color is just out of this world. The matching headstock, I mean, come on, how cool is that? But just overall, the fit and finish of the guitar itself was fantastic. But the real proof is in the pudding. So I'm going to turn on my guitar amps, not my bass amps. I'm going to turn on my guitar amps and let you hear what this sounds like. Let's hop over there and check a look. We're going to start with just our neck pickup. We'll play through each of the pickups. The thing I didn't mention in the intro is this also has a stay trim bridge on it, which I got to say, with the Mastery trim, with these thicker strings, that stay trim allows those thicker strings to roll through and keep pretty good tuning stability, which I've been really impressed by. So you could do actual use of the vibrato. And you don't lose your tuning stability. It holds up really, really well. But you can hear, again, playing through guitar amps here, the low end here. It's not flubbing out the guitar. Now we'll just do the middle pickup by itself. And then the bridge. See, the bridge almost gets a telly twang. And then when you add the mid pickup in, I love that sound. The mid by itself is amazing, but the mid with the bridge, or even the mid with the neck here, I just don't think there's a better set of Bass 6 pickups, period. I have Curtis Novaks, which I love on my other Bass 6, but these blow them out of the water. They're just so articulate. Even with chords. Even when you're hitting it hard. Just abso-freaking-lutely gorgeous. But then here's the real fun. Let's turn on some effects. What I've done is added in a little polyphrase echo and some avalanche run, delay, and reverb. And oh man, just what you get. I'm just gonna look at, I mean, that is just a killer sound. just abso-freaking-lutely killer sounding. Okay, I think that's a good place for us to stop for this week's episode. Next week, we will deep dive into the last half a dozen pieces that I think were just absolutely killer in 2024. Hope you've enjoyed these. I hope you got to see a couple of great new things. That Redwing, dead serious, genuinely one of the best stereo pedals I've ever heard in my entire life. They absolutely nailed this. And that Seuf, oh my gosh, that Bass 6 is just nuts. I can't tell you how amazed I am at their work on that. It's just, it's mind-blowing. So excellent job to everybody. Can't wait to see you back here next week. We'll have a lot more fun. Thanks again to my friends at Palen. As always, please go check them out if you get some time, and follow us on Instagram. Hopefully we'll be doing a little bit more there this year as well. But more importantly, please come back next week, because there is a half a dozen other things that I want to show you from 2024 that I think were absolutely mind-blowing, and I don't want you to miss out on those either. So join us next week to take a look at those. Take care and have a wonderful week.